You never know when and where you'll meet an entitled parent. That's why you need to be prepared, because an encounter could happen when you least expect it. Our fan-submitted story. It's never fun when you meet an entitled parent, but what about growing up with one? This woman has to put up with her mother for years, until she finally decides she's had enough. Attack of another Karen. This time it happens in a lovely neighborhood, where a man and his family already have plans that don't include Karen. How does she try to weasel her way into their plans? A woman is enjoying playing her 3DS on a bus. She's approached by an entitled mother who makes demands of her. But the surprising thing is, the reason the mother gives for making those demands. What is her reason? You'll only find out by watching this episode of VoiceyHere's Entitled Parents. This fan-submitted story was called My Entitled Parent Wants in My Kid's Life After Damaging Mine. My mum is a very nasty, lazy, selfish entitled woman who not only expected to get her way with strangers, but expected it from her kids too. Not to mention, really lazy. I say this again because as soon as me and my little sister were able to be relatively independent, she expected us to completely take over almost all of the household chores, and expected us, me mainly, to look after our severely autistic brother, because she couldn't be bothered. If we ever tried to say no, we would be screamed at, threatened, or struck. Keep in mind, we were still kids being forced to do an adult's job. This crap went on for years, with her taking it out on me mainly, body shaming me, despite me being underweight already, screaming down my ear for being too terrified to understand what she wanted me to do, or making small mistakes that didn't need her overreaction. I myself am autistic and have learning disabilities, which made it much harder. Now, every now and then on Christmas, my aunt would give us expensive presents or a lot of money, but eventually she stopped it due to it always going to my brother, because my mum couldn't be bothered dealing with his tantrums every time he broke his, so she'd replace his with ours. The final straw was when my aunt gave me £300 for my birthday, because over a period of time, my mum manipulated me into giving her some money promising she'd pay me back. She never did. I had £80 left from that money, and decided to use it to buy a ticket for a school trip to France, as it was to learn about the history of France. As soon as she found out what I had done, she went ballistic. I remember some of what followed because she screamed to the darn rooftops, can I use some money? I need it to pay for..." I can't even remember what it was. I can't. I just spent it on a ticket to go to France in a month's time.
You what?
I spent my money.
And how do you expect to afford food and clothes during the trip?
The school provides food, so it's not like I'd be starving. I'm only going to learn, not to buy junk. I was absolutely terrified and also annoyed, because if she actually paid me back, like she promised, I'd have the freaking money to afford that in the first place.
You go back to school right now and get that freaking money back.
As the relatively obedient child I was, I went back and asked my teacher for the money, due to my parents not wanting me to go. Upon hearing that she just gave it back to me, confused with a, "Are you sure?" clearly seeing how visibly upset I was, and replied, "Yes." I didn't get to go, and for that full week I was stuck in class with the one other pupil doing absolutely nothing. Fast forward a few years, I've graduated high school and finally in my first proper relationship at 18. My mother is now jumping down my throat about how I'm a fat, lazy slob who hasn't bothered to get a darn job despite the fact that I was assessed already for having severe anxiety and depression. Basically, I'm not fit for work. Last time I tried getting a job at a hairdresser's and ended up having a panic attack during the interview. Reason she wanted me to have a job was because she'd expect to still pilfer through my wages to pay for useless crap, and when my claim for benefits was a success, she did exactly that. So not only is she getting money from my severely disabled little brother's benefits, she is now getting money off me by making me pay rent, £60 to be exact. In comes my boyfriend, who I invite over to my house, which I can't tell if it was a big mistake or an angel sent from heaven, because he was the only one who stood up to her, compared to my whole family. At first she was extremely nice to him, like she did every other person, to glaze over the horrible person she really was. But it all changed after my partner stood up against her, after he watched her scream at me in tears because my mum's boyfriend's mutt ripped up the trash for the second time after I cleaned it. He warned my mum that if she ever laid a finger on me again, he'd personally buy me a plane ticket and get me out of the hellhole we called home, and took me upstairs, trying to comfort me while my mum is screaming threats and other profanities from in the kitchen at him and me. From then on, when he wasn't looking during the whole week of his stay, she would complain to me about the pettiest things, like how he didn't wash that day, or how he didn't do this or that. But the main thing she tried worming into my brain is how he would cheat on me. The one that hurt the most was that she said, "You know, if you two have a kid, it's gonna grow up freaking retarded." All of this because she wanted me to break up with him. It failed, and like he promised, I got the first plane out of my home after an argument had led to me finally trying to stand up to her. I had a slightly swollen red cheek by the time I managed to contact him, and I could tell if he lived near me, he probably would have made my mum pick on someone who can actually fight back and wasn't terrified of her. A few years later, I'm now with child. Just a week later from coming out of the hospital after giving birth, still in agony due to needing stitches. So I wasn't in the mood to deal with anyone's BS. I get a text from my mum on my sister's account, congratulating me on the delivery and how much she missed me, how much she misses our relationship, blah blah blah. Basically her just trying to kiss my butt. Here are some messages from what I remember, since I did delete them, not wanting her in my life anymore than she was.
"Oh, Hen, congratulations on the delivery. I hope it went okay. She looks absolutely beautiful, just like her mom."
I was not replying, but just leaving her messages on read because I know how much that ticked her off.
"I really miss you, Hen. Not a day's gone by where I haven't missed you. Please let me back into your life. Don't do this to your kid. She shouldn't grow up without knowing her gran. It wouldn't be fair on her. I know I messed up. I'm not perfect, but no mother is. Please give me another chance, babe. For your daughter's sake. It would just be selfish not to. Come on, Hen, don't do this to me."
These were some of the things I remember her sending me. And yes, she involved my week-old baby into this just to try and guilt trip me again. There were more posts like this, where she continuously begged me how much she loved me and even got her own boyfriend into this, as well as a friend of hers, to convince me into letting her be involved. She wasn't even wanting to repair our broken relationship. She was just interested in worming her way into my kid's life. I gave her a chance a year beforehand, and again she proved me right to not give her another chance. I have the messages to these. Pretty much called me a name for not being over nearly 10 plus years of mistreatment. How I will never change, to which I blocked her on her account. And now she is using my sister's account to contact me after years of silence. Not even putting in the effort to prove she is trustworthy to be part of my family. My boyfriend at the time had enough of her because he saw I was clearly upset by all of her texts trying to twist into how I needed her, a part of the family, for the sake of my kid. He replied with a simple sentence, "Please stop texting my wife." He did this to spite her because she despised him, and it was his own way of getting petty revenge. She stopped talking immediately, and we haven't heard from her since. She damaged a good portion of my life, so I took the opportunity of seeing her grandchild away, completely missed out on the news of being able to support me throughout my pregnancy, the baby scan, recordings, and witnesses of the birth, and much more. If you mess with my life, don't expect me to let you mess up my kids. As much as it upset me that she tried pulling this crap again after so many years, it still satisfied me that I got to see her beg me, and me having the courage to put my foot down once and for all. Unfortunately, she hasn't learned her lesson, and I still hear the horrible things she's done to the rest of my family, and unfortunately drove all of them away. My whole family want nothing to do with her. It's crazy how an entitled person can completely mistreat other people, family, friends, co-workers, and then still expect to be involved in their lives. Why would somebody invite you into their life if they're just going to be toxic and mistreat them? If you have someone in your life that's toxic and mistreating you, and you feel like you should distance yourself, they are going to make you look like the bad guy. They might even lie about you to their friends and say that you were the horrible person for putting distance in the relationship. So just consider very carefully the relationships you have and the relationships you want to distance yourself from, and the consequences of both. And try and seek advice from wise people around you. Sometimes the way you go about an action can be more important than the action itself. This story was called The Time Karen and Her Crotch Fruit Invited Themselves to a Barbecue and Insisted I Helped Them Move In. So you folks have asked for more Karen stories, and who am I to deny you? Let's go back 1 year ago to the gated master planned community I live in. Most of the neighbors in the tract of the community I live in had moved in. My wife and I decided, why not throw a barbecue, meet the neighbors. The day of the barbecue, a moving van pulled up and out came Karen. Wearing her LuLaRoe leggings, her hair in the classic speak to the manager cut, and a Starbucks coffee in hand. She got out and marched over, seeing me in my garage.
Hey you, I'm a single mother. Just got divorced, and I need you to help move some of my heavier things.
Cue deer in the headlight. I'm getting ready to host a barbecue, but I guess I can help lift some of the heavier things.
Oh, barbecue, lovely, we love barbecue. What time should we be there?
Well, I was trying to think of the nicest way to tell her no. It's been planned for a while and we kinda already got the food we needed.
Oh, no worries, my kids do not eat much, and my father and I will eat anything.
She started pulling me over, while I silently will my wife to come out of the house.
So, are you married?
She had a hopeful look in her eyes. Yes, very happily. She frowned.
Well, there's bound to be lots of single men at your party, right?
No, everyone is a couple, save a few older women and one older man. So this heavy stuff.
Oh, here my dad comes with the U-Haul.
So he pulls over, the kids get out, the younger one screeching, the older one exclaiming the house looked like crap. This point I am wondering if I should try to run for it. The father notices me and exclaims, "Thank goodness, no way I can carry half this stuff." I ended up helping for an hour, then thankfully my wife, who is now up, she works nights, was looking for me. I gleefully ran home, thankful I never told her the time of the party. Cue to 7 and we were all lightly buzzed, food consumed, hanging by the pool, when the doorbell rings. It's Karen, the kids who were fighting, and her poor father, who looked like this was the last place he wanted to be.
Hi, hope you all have lots of food, we are starving.
Well, I explained to you, we only had enough for those we invited.
What? You couldn't save us 4 hot dogs? My kids are hungry.
Come on, I will take us for pizza.
Yay, pizza!
Way to make my family feel welcomed.
Then she turns and walks off. How can you invite yourself to someone else's party without feeling awkward? I'll say hello to somebody, they'll say hi, and then I'll say good thanks, without them asking how am I going. And I'll feel awkward at that, let alone inviting myself rocking up at someone's house expecting to be welcomed in. Were entitled people just like raised by wild possums or something? This story was called You're Going to Have a Child, You Don't Need Video Games. For a little bit of backstory, this happened just today, and the circumstances of its occurrence should have screamed that something was going to happen. My wife and I are students at the university in the town in which we live, and we have a house from which we commute to school every day. Today, however, her car happened to be in the shop for routine maintenance, and my older sister was borrowing my truck to pick up her kids from their dad. Lastly, my wife is currently in the last stages of pregnancy, which meant that walking or biking like we sometimes do on nice days was out of the question. That left us with our final option, the bus. Luck was on our side in the fact that there was a bus stop only a couple blocks away from our house, so we didn't have to walk too far. The bus came within a few minutes of us waiting, so before long we found ourselves seated and moving. Typically, when we head off to our classes, she brings her 3DS with her to play while she waits for her next class. It's an original model 3DS that I got for her on our second Christmas together, and she's always taken very good care of it. Today, she brought Ocarina of Time to play, and she was fighting one of the bosses as young Link, and that is when the villain of our story enters the scene. The bus driver brought the bus to a stop, and the doors swung open to give entry to a woman, probably in her mid to late 30s, and her kid, a boy probably 7 or 8, maybe 9 at the most. The bus isn't crowded, but nonetheless, as we're closer to the front, the mum decided they're going to sit down with us. The kid sits between my wife and his mum, and occasionally we catch him staring at the game my wife is playing. After a little while, she smiles and positions herself so that he can watch a bit better, and then, a little later, hands it over and lets him start playing. For his credit, the kid was actually really nice, very polite, and not at all entitled, which made me feel even sorrier for him when all was said and done. Our stop finally arrived, and as he saw me stand and help my wife up, the kid closed the DS and made to hand it back to us. My wife thanked him and reached out to take it, but then his mum snatched it right out of her kid's hands. The ensuing conversation went something closely to what follows. "Oh, excuse me, but that's mine."
But he was having so much fun. Can't he just play a little longer?
"I'm sorry, but this is our stop and I really need it back. I don't want to hold up the bus any more than we have to."
Aren't you a bit old for video games? I think giving them up could do you some good.
As she said that, she patted her own stomach. Did she really think my wife is just fat? My wife looked at me and raised her eyebrows like, "Is this bee serious?" Then said, "I'm pregnant, ma'am," in what was probably the least enthusiastic tone of voice I heard her say it in.
See, you won't be needing it anyway, so he can have it, right?
Not unless you want to go out and buy one for him. This one is very special to us and we'd like it back.
Mom, just give it back.
The entitled mum rounding on her kid.
Be quiet, I've got this.
Turns back to us.
You're going to have a baby. You won't have time for video games, so you surely won't miss this.
The exchange went back and forth for a bit, before the bus driver got out of his seat and came over. Unlike many mums in her position, this particular entitled mum relented when faced with someone with some amount of authority, and reluctantly relinquished the 3DS. The kid looked clearly ashamed of his mum. We got off, said goodbye to the kid, and thanked the bus driver for coming to our rescue. In between classes, she beat the inside of King Jabu Jabu's belly. You know, it's pretty sad when the kid is more reasonable than the parent. You gotta feel bad for those kids, but at the same time, you kinda feel like maybe there's a bit of hope there that they won't grow up completely messed up. If you'd like your story to be narrated by me, don't forget to visit the subreddit r/VoiceyHere, link below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you'd like to see more. Alright, I'll see you in the next one.
You go back to school right now and get that freaking money back.